Hey everybody, it is your professor, your coding friend, and your local pool's lifeguard, and today we're talking about CSS. So before we get started, make sure you go to the homework assignment, click on the glitch link, make sure you're logged in, remix, and go into settings to change the title. So what is CSS? CSS is the style that you apply to your homepage. We've done HTML. HTML is the bones, all the fancy stuff, the colors, the fonts, the positioning, the negative space, that's applied through your CSS. So when we did HTML, we have all of the bones, the major elements, and when you link the CSS in, that's when it starts looking pretty. So CSS is a new programming language that is different than HTML, which means it uses different grammar and syntax that you have to respect or it's going to yell at you. So when we had elements in HTML, like your paragraph, your image, your body, your header, in CSS we have rule sets and they look like this. Keep track of the negative space. So inside of your rule set you have your selector, the thing that you were changing the style of. So here I am changing up the heading 1. The next is your declaration block. That's where you put all of the things that you are redecorating for that element that you've selected. It is started and ended with these curly brackets. Inside are your declarations. You can have as many as you want between these brackets. Right now I just have one. On the left side you have the property, the thing that you are changing. Then you give it a colon and a space, and then what you are changing it to. And then you end it with a colon, and then you go to the next line to declare the next change that you want to make. Make sure that when you're doing these changes that they are indented so you can see the things that are nested inside. So you know the thing that's being selected and then the indent, all of the things that are being changed. You don't have to memorize all of those terms, but it's important to know so that when you are looking up documentation and how to use stuff, you know what they're talking about. Your style.css is where you're going to put all of your decoration changes. You can have multiple style sheets, but if you're going to have one, it should be called style.css. That's just standard. Inside of the head of all of your HTML documents, you need to put a link to the style sheet that you want to use. If you just have it in one, that's not enough. For every page that you have, every HTML that you have, you should link to your style sheet up at the top where all of the metadata goes. And the link looks like this. Just copy and paste it and change up this bit to the name of your style sheet. And again, you can link more than one style sheet. If you just have the one, it should be this one. So how do you select things from your HTML document in order to change their look? You can start out with the universal selector. So the universal selector will select each individual element inside of your HTML document, and it will change its style to whatever you put in here. So this is a really nice way of defaulting out your web page. So all of your browsers, your Firefoxes, your Chromes, your Safaris, they all have their own default style sheets. Just in case you don't have one, it can still show the page anyway. The downside is that they will apply it to your page whether or not you want them to, and so you get some weird styling that maybe you don't like. And so using star is a nice way to zero it all out before you add your style in. So let's do that right now. I'm going to copy and paste some code that I usually use in the top of my documents. And you can copy and paste in too. Oh, why did I do that? I'll do this. Okay, so inside of the canvas, go down here, copy, go over to your CSS. So you may have this first. Click this. We're going to use a universal selector, star, curly bracket, next line. So you can see right here, I have this weird negative space on the left and the top of this super big image of a turtle. And if I paste, you can see now that that weird negative space is gone. And that's because part of my resetting is I said, I don't want any margins, I don't want any padding, let me add in my own. And so that disappeared. I also said I want by default the font size to be 16 and to be a sans serif. And so down here, everything is 16 and a sans serif. Nice. You can select individual elements. So we have paragraph element, image elements, divs, article, all that stuff. To select those, change the style of them. You just put whatever you use to as the element in HTML. So for like images, it's IMG, for paragraphs, it's P, so on and so forth. So if you want to select any of those, you just put those letters there, curly brackets, and then how you want to change them. So let's do that. We're going to change our H1 element to blue, and we're going to change our image element to 100 VW. I'll talk about that. So right now, our H1 is this, and it is black. And if I go down here and I say H1, curly bracket, color, blue, that will change the color of the font to blue. And there it is. There are some default named colors in HTML. You can find a list of them. There's like 100 something. So it's limited, but it's really nice for starting out so you don't have to worry about hex codes and all of that. I'm also going to change the image because this is huge. It's so big. So let's scale it down. IMG, curly brackets, and then width, colon, and then 100 VW. VW stands for viewer width. And so however wide the viewer or the browser is, this thing is going to be 100% of that window. And so if I make it small or large, it's reactive. Downside though, because I've already said how tall it is in the HTML document and I haven't overridden that in my CSS, it's still going to be that tall. So he's squashing and stretching. We fix this by saying next line, height, auto. And so what that says is automatically resize the height so that you don't squash and stretch it. And you can use auto for width too, whichever one you want. But I want it to be the width of the browser. And now look at him. Beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous. So that's how you select elements. You can get more specific. You can select a class. We've used classes. So here I have a class equals button. And this is how you can group different elements together. So maybe I have a bunch of different buttons. I can all give them class equal button. And then I can go into my CSS and say period button. And that's how CSS knows it's a class. And then I can make all of my buttons have a background of blue. So let's do that. Inside of my code, I have a list class, and I want to change its background color to dark slate blue. Just say color, but I want background color. So in here, I'll show you where it is. So here I made a div with the class of list. So all of this is going to be given a background of dark slate blue. So I'm going to say dot list, and you can see that my CSS is helping me out with the styling. So when I select a element, it makes it blue and bold, and when I select a class, it makes it white and italic. So that's a visual way of keeping track. And I'm going to say background dash color colon dark slate blue, another pre-named color, semicolon, and there you go. All of those elements now have a background of dark slate blue. Is that all I had? Yeah. Okay. You can also give HTML elements multiple classes. So if you need to reverse engineer it and you're like, well, I want a bunch of things to be big, and also I have a bunch of buttons, but not all of my buttons need to be big. Sometimes I want big things to be like the title or a link. You can have a class that is big that you just add to things to make them big, and then you can also give it a space and another class. So inside of your CSS, you'd say, okay, all buttons get blue, and then anything that is big is 120% the size. So you can apply big to anything, and that just makes it, more flexible. I'll show you an example in the homework. So I'm going to change everything that has a class of fact white, and anything that is fun, I'm going to make it italic, just so you know that it's fun. And in my HTML, I'll show you where that's at. So here in my lists, I have 3 facts, but only the first one is fun. And so I determined that by saying fun space fact. So this element here has 2 classes. And in my CSS, I can say dot fact. I want all of my facts to have a white font, so color. white, and that changes the text to white. Very nice. And then I want the fun one to be italic, so .fun. Font style, that's how you do bold and italics. Sorry, no, just italic. And there you go. It's italic because it's the only one that is fun. You can also select IDs. So we did IDs in our link lecture where we linked from the top or the bottom of the page to the top of the page using ID. You select it the same way in CSS. You use the hash and the name of that ID. For all of these, they are all case sensitive, so make sure you make it identical for the capitalization and lowercase, and they are spelling sensitive. So if you spell it different, it's not going to guess for you, it's going to assume that is a different thing. So here I'm selecting the ID of home button and giving it a padding. And so let's do that in the homework. I have all of my facts, I've given them IDs of which number they are. Remember that ID can only be used one time. You cannot give two things the same ID. It's very specific. It has to be one thing is called that. If you try to do two things, it'll throw you an error. Can't do it. So I'm going to change the thing that is ID'd as 3. I'm going to make it so that it is underlined. So in my index, I'll just show you here. Bloop. I have the ID 3. So that's my last fact. So pound is selecting the ID, 3, curly brackets, and then text dash decoration, colon, underline, and now it's underlined. Very nice. You won't use ID selection very much. Try using classes first and getting specific with classes before using ID. You will very rarely see IDs used for styling. You'll see them a lot on like internal links, not so much in your CSS. Same thing with attribute selectors, but I want you to know where they are in case, or what they are in case you need them or see them. So attribute are href, source, width, height, alt. That's stuff that we put into the opening tags. That is an attribute, and you can select attributes or things that have that attribute. So here I'm saying brackets, I'm looking at attributes, and then anything that has the attribute of href, so links, should be the color blue. So here I'm saying anything that has this attribute should be the color blue. We're not going to use an example of that because it's very rare. Pseudo classes are not rare. You'll use them all the time for links. They're great for styling links. So a pseudo class is a class that is by default part of an element in HTML. So links have pseudo classes because there's lots of different ways you can interact with them. So just by their nature, a link can be hovered over, clicked on. It has different states of not clicked or clicked. And so that's what pseudo classes are. To select a pseudo class, you select that thing. So here links or a colon, and then the name of that pseudo class. You can find that on MDN if you're not sure what the pseudo classes are for something that you're working on. So here are the pseudo classes that you should use for links, and in the order you should use them. The order is important. It'll do weird style glitches if you put them in the wrong order. So that's an unvisited link, colon link, a visited link, something you've clicked on and come back to, colon visited. When you're hovering over it with your cursor, colon hover, and then when you're clicking on it, that's colon active. So let's change it up. We're going to change an unvisited link to blue, a visited link to dark red, hover, we're going to remove the underline, and when we click on it, we'll change it to orange. So this is a lot of stuff, but you'll usually just copy and paste this and just change the details. So A for link, colon, so we're saying we're using a pseudo class, and link for an unvisited link. Then our curly brackets and color blue. I've already been practicing, so mine didn't change because I already clicked on it, so it's no longer unclicked, but if I did not click it earlier, it would be blue. And then the next one is a colon visited, oh, no space, visited, curly brackets, color dark red, and so because I clicked on it before, There we go. It changed to dark red. And then A colon hover. Yeah, that's the next one. And we're going to change that so that it isn't underlined. By default, right now, it's underlined because it's a link. But when we hover over it, I want to get rid of that. So I'm going to say text decoration colon space none semicolon. And now, boop, nope. Nice. And then last but not least, A colon active color orange. And now if I click on it, it changes orange. Very nice. Cool. So specificity. If you're changing the color of something multiple times, like you have the color change at different points in your style sheet, the one that is the most specific is the one that it's going to use. So you may say, hey, by default, I want all of the text to be red, but I want specifically this link to be purple. Because you said specifically that one, it will do that one instead. Everything else will stay purple, but that thing that you specifically pointed at, it will say, oop, that's important. You wanted that to be purple. That one's purple. So the order of most generic to most specific is elements and star are the most generic, and then classes are more specific, and then ID is most specific. And then if you combine those together, that becomes even more specific, and I'll show you what I mean. So it's called chaining. So to get even more specific here, to be more specific than link, or more specific than the class button, you can say a.button, and then you're selecting and changing every link that has the class button. So that's more specific than one or the other. If there is a link with the class button, it will change it to this, and it will prioritize this because it's more specific. You can also chain nested elements. So that's why in HTML it's important for you to indent things that are nested in other things, because that can change how you select them. So it's important to know which things you can select like this. So here I have this thing called, I have this list called class menu. And inside it, I have a couple of elements. And maybe earlier up in my document, I said all list elements should be red. If I come in and I say .menu list elements, that's more specific. It's just the list elements that are inside of menu, not everything. And so it will do that instead. It will override whatever I had earlier if it contradicts. I just said that. Okay, so I'll show you what I mean. So I'm changing this up actually, because I tested it. I like this new version better. So we've already clicked on this, so it's dark red because that is the A visited is dark red. We clicked on it and came back, so it's dark red. But let's say that I think that this dark red is too harsh. It's too mean looking. I want it to be a nicer, friendlier color. This is actually inside of my footer. If I show you here, it's inside of my footer. And maybe I like all the other links to be dark red, but the footer I want to be friendlier. So down here I can say footer space A visited. And so I'm selecting all of my links that are inside the footer. So it's more specific than here because it's just the ones in the footer. And I can say color green. And now it's green. And it has overwritten this. Even though this already exists, this is more specific, so it's going to do that instead. You can also select multiple things. So if you have more than one element or class or what have you that needs the same styling and you find yourself typing the same thing over and over and over again, stop that, go back up, and just make a new selector and separate each of the things that need that same style with a comma. So here I'm selecting both all of the H1s and everything that has a class of menu, and I'm changing their family to Tahoma. So if you're selecting separate things, separate them by a comma, and then you can apply that same style to it, and you don't have to copy and paste over and over again. So I'll show you what I mean. We're going to select all of our H1 elements and our paragraph elements and change them to serif. So here at the top, I said every element should be sans serif, but now I'm going to go in and be more specific. I'm going to say all of my H1, comma, all of my paragraphs, curly brackets, font dash family serif. And now, there we go. All of my H1 is now a serif, and my only paragraph element, this guy, is also a serif. So there we go. It changed it up. And then everything else stays with that more generic sans serif that I put at the top. The nuclear option of specificity is exclamation point, important, semicolon. The semicolon goes after the important. So whatever you want the style to be, you add this, put the semicolon, and it will do that no matter what. No matter how specific you get later, it will always do the one that is important. It is the pinnacle of importance, of specificity. It will always do this first. So the only times you should do this is if there are no other options. Maybe you're using somebody else's style sheet, and no matter what you're doing, you cannot find the thing that is styling the thing you're trying to change, and it just isn't working. So you put important on there, and it works. Okay, use this as little as possible, only if you absolutely have to, because if someone needs to come in and use that document later, and they need to restyle it, they're not going to figure out why the heck their really specific code isn't changing it, and it's because this important is here. So use it sparingly, nuclear option. The other thing you should use important for is debugging. So if you're trying to change the style of something and you think maybe it's specificity, like maybe something else is changing that style and for some reason it's not overwriting it, you can add important, and then if that thing doesn't change, you know specificity isn't the issue. Maybe you spelled something wrong, maybe the capitalization's different, maybe you forgot to even link the style sheet in the first place. This helps you know what is the issue, and then after you figure out what the issue is, delete it. Okay, so today we introduced what CSS is. We introduced the basic grammar and syntax of CSS and how to select different elements and classes and IDs and so on inside of your HTML document. And inside of the homework, we changed elements, classes, IDs, we selected nested elements, we selected pseudo classes, we got specific. And next time in class, we'll review it. We'll do a little exercise, and I'll see you then.